Good evening. It's good to see you again. I see that there are 10 of us here already, so that's good. Why don't we wait just a moment to see if there's anybody else who may be able to make it in, and then we'll get started. So pardon me, I'm going to sip on some coffee while we're waiting. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that an Elizabeth Warren joke? No. So we'll just wait a moment while we're waiting for people to filter in. All right, well, I guess we've got the number of people that we're going to get, so why don't we go ahead and get started. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. It's been a very long week. And by long, I mean long. It's been a difficult week in some respects, on a personal level, but in a professional capacity, it's just been crazy. I'll kind of walk you through how things went. So last week I told you that we were going to prepare to put forward a report on the Makolo project. Right after I got off the call with you all, I finished the video. I was done. I was going to call it quits for the evening, and I looked at my phone and I saw that Bishop Mansour had called, and I thought, oh well, I'd probably better call him back. And he left a message, a voicemail message for me while I was speaking with you. And his voicemail message was to ask me to please delay publication of the report on the Makolo project. Well, I wasn't going to do that. So I started to look something up, and I saw in my email that I had, because I get news alerts in my email about Catholic Relief Services. I have them flagged for news alerts so that I can see what else is coming up. And I was looking at my news alerts, and right there, it said that Bill O'Keefe, or William O'Keefe, who is a senior executive vice president of Catholic Relief Services, had requested billions of dollars in a testimony that he gave personally to Congress for USAID, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund. Some background. Last year, when I did my reports on Catholic Relief Services, and I did another follow-up report talking about how CRS had requested robust, quote-unquote, robust funding for those three agencies. And when I did that report, shortly after, I wound up talking to Bishop Mansour about it. And yeah, I just want to start off by saying, I think Bishop Mansour is very sincere. I have no reason at all to doubt that Bishop Mansour is thoroughly pro-life, that he is, I believe truly and honestly that he is a good man. Okay. I just need to say that because I do not want to smear his character in any way, shape, or form. I've considered him a friend. I do think he's a good man. So last year, when I talked about what was going on with Catholic Relief Services and the lobbying request that was made by CRS to Congress to fund the Global Fund and PEPFAR, I mentioned to him that, hey, these two organizations are out there spreading contraception and condoms. The Global Fund actually funds Planned Parenthood. I found several grants that they made to Planned Parenthood. And Catholic Relief Services is asking for money for them on their behalf. Not only is CRS asking for money for them, but CRS receives money from the Global Fund. So there's a little bit of a problem here. Well, so I talked to Bishop Mansour about this, and he said, we really missed an opportunity. We should have said something about, how it's problematic that they spread contraception and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, really, Your Excellency, you shouldn't be asking them for money to fund those groups at all. And, it was a very strange back and forth back then. This is a year ago. Because I would say, why is Catholic Relief Services lobbying on behalf of PEPFAR, the Global Fund, and USAID? It doesn't make any sense. And he said, well, it's important for us to work with these agencies, and I would much rather that when they do issue their grants, that they make sure that the money that the money actually comes to CRS, where we do good things and we don't do any of the contraception and stuff that, say, CARE or Save the Children or some of those other organizations do. And so that funding would then go to us, and we can have a greater control over how it works, and blah, 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 blah. And I stopped and I said, Your Excellency, that's not what I asked. I wanted to know why CRS is lobbying Congress to give funding to these agencies. And you answered by saying it's good for CRS to receive that money, and that it's good because CRS uses that money for ostensibly good things. I said, these are two different questions. I want to know why CRS is asking Congress to give funding to PEPFAR, USAID, and the Global Fund. And he didn't really have an answer for me. And it's been about a year. It's been a year. And he never really had an answer for me. He couldn't really provide me an answer. And it wasn't until one conversation one evening where we went back and forth, and I just said, full stop. CRS is asking Congress to give money to these people. I don't care how CRS uses the money that they get from them. I don't care about anything else. Why is CRS asking Congress to give money to them? Period. I don't want to know about anything else. Just that. And the best that I got was, well, you make a good point. That was the best. I at least had hoped that I was getting the wheels turning, that I was getting the thought process going. So when I saw the phone call on Friday, and I heard his voicemail where he asked if I could delay the report for another week on the Makolo project, which I told you about, I was immediately disinclined. I wasn't going to do it. But then when I saw the email that said that Bill O'Keefe, representing Catholic Relief Services, had requested almost $9 billion for those three agencies, I lost it. I was absolutely incensed, because there was no mention of any concern for the contraception pushing components or any of the wicked things that those three agencies do. No concern whatsoever. Just, we appreciate what those organizations do. We think they deserve funding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I called Bishop Mansour back, and I left a voicemail message, and I just said, we need to talk. He didn't call me back. So I sent him an email. And in my email, I'll actually just share with you what I said. Let me open it here. I said, let's see, where is it? Here it is. I said, Your Excellency, I saw that you called this afternoon, and I returned your call and left a message. I think you should know that right after I saw that you tried to call, I saw an article indicating that CRS this week requested unqualified funding from Congress for contraception pushing agencies PEPFAR, USAID, and the Global Fund. The paltry disclaimer in the USCCB CRS document found in the back pages of the USCCB's website barely addresses the depth of the problem with these agencies while requesting billions of dollars for them. I'm not sure why CRS omitted the fact that they called for substantial funding for PEPFAR and USAID in its press release. But even worse is the fact that not a single concern with these agencies was identified in CRS Senior Executive Vice President Bill O'Keefe's testimony before the House committee, as he officially, on behalf of CRS, requests increased funding for these dreadful organizations. And just so you know how completely and thoroughly rotten the Global Fund is, as if funding Planned Parenthood isn't bad enough, this is their strategy for 2017 to 2022, which CRS is now complicit in by requesting funding for them. I want to draw your attention to page 3, where it says, the Global Fund strategy outlines a bold agenda for the 6-year period 2017 to 2022. It is based on an ambitious vision, mission, and 4 strategic objectives, which are each underpinned by a number of sub-objectives and supported by 2 strategic enablers. The core objectives of the Global Fund 2017 to 2022 strategy are 2, and then there's a list, and then it gets down to number 7, strategic objective 3, promote and protect human rights and gender equality. There are 5 operational objectives. They include, number 1, scale up programs to support women and girls, including programs to advance sexual and reproductive health and rights. Anytime an agency talks about reproductive health and rights, it always means abortion and contraception. Your Excellency, when we discussed this issue last year, you expressed regret that CRS missed an opportunity to use stronger language to condemn these elements of USAID, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund, which run counter to the Church's teaching, and you assured me that such language would be used next time it came up. Not only is the language weaker than it was last year, but it wasn't even mentioned in Bill O'Keefe's testimony to Congress. What CRS did in Congress is absolutely unconscionable. USAID, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund are the world's largest distributors of contraception, and the proportionalist arguments put forth by CRS year after year that the lives saved somehow outweighs the scandal caused is despicable. To say that I am upset by this is the understatement of the year. I thought we had actually made progress on this front when we discussed it a year ago. It seems that CRS's resolve to do better is not so great as either of our hopes. And then I gave him a time when we would be able to discuss. And I'll just, there was a lot of back and forth after that. But the bottom line was that in a follow-up conversation, he had really hoped that we could keep things in-house. In other words, that I wouldn't be publishing articles, that I would be feeding him information, and he'd be able to do a lot of the back-end stuff to try and fix things on the inside without having to go public with this. And I said, Your Excellency, what Bill O'Keefe did by testifying in Congress was a public act. Not only was it a public act, but but various news agencies, including CRS, in a press release, talked about what a wonderful thing it was that they had done. I said, that can't go unanswered. I have to write an article. And after some discussion, he eventually relented and he said, okay, I understand that. He said, but I would like some more time on the other stuff. And I said, fine. I'm going to go ahead and publish an article on what happened with Bill O'Keefe and his request at Congress. And I'll give you another week on Mikolo. If you have something for me, then we can discuss after that. If not, I'm just going to go ahead and publish. And so that's how we left it at that. Well, so I wrote my article. And if you haven't seen it, let me go ahead and call this up. I'll give you a link to it. This is the report that I wrote. It's rather long, typed out on Microsoft Word. I think it came to about 6 pages. But the bottom line was that what I did, I talked about the testimony, and I said Catholic Relief Services had requested this funding, which is a problem because these 3 agencies are really bad. But I specified exactly what USAID is. It's not just a contraception pushing organization. USAID was established in 1961 as a population control organization. That was its original charter. That's why it was created. It says, and I'll read you this. You can see it in the report, but I'm just going to read to you this portion. The United States Agency for International Development was originally created as a population control program. USAID was created through the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961. Here's what the act says. Paragraph 4, subsection B of section 102 says the following. Development assistance provided under this chapter shall be concentrated in countries which make the most effective use of such assistance to help satisfy basic human needs of poor people through equitable growth, especially in the countries having the greatest need for outside assistance. In order to make possible consistent and informed judgments in this respect, the President shall assess the commitment and progress of countries in moving toward the objectives and purposes of this chapter by utilizing criteria, including but not limited to the following. And there's an A, which is increased agricultural productivity, B, which is a reduction of infant mortality, and C, control of population growth. Now, let me go back to what it says in paragraph 4, that in order to make possible consistent and informed judgments, the President shall assess. What does that say? That says that the President, in order to determine whether he's going to continue throwing money at a particular country, he wants to get progress reports on how committed the country is to implementing or improving certain aspects of their civilized lives. And included in that list was population control. So the President for USAID in 1961 was in charge of assessing how committed a country was on population control. So if a country wanted money, if a country wanted funding from the US government, they were going to have to prove to the US government that they were absolutely committed to population control. It's like dangling a steak in front of a bunch of starving people in a homeless shelter and saying, I want to know how committed you all are to wanting this steak. And in order to get this steak, you're going to have to eliminate the weakest among you. That's what that says. That's what that's like. This is an evil organization. There's nothing good about it. They do good only for the purpose of committing further evil. That's their purpose. That's why they exist. That Catholic Relief Services has anything to do with USAID is absolutely unconscionable. There's no excuse for this. And yet there they are. And the question is why? It's all about money. It's all about money. And you'll see it in this article. You'll see it in the report that I put together. I went through and I talked about all of the population control stuff with USAID. And the thing is, 1961, when it was established, they said population control was one of their primary criteria for determining whether they were going to continue funding in a particular area. But then, if you go to USAID's website, even now, under the section, the heading of family planning and reproductive health, it says that as the world's largest family planning bilateral donor, USAID is committed to helping countries meet the family planning and reproductive health needs of their people. I want to read you the bottom portion of this, where it says, moreover, modern contraceptive use in the 27 countries with the largest USAID supported programs has increased from under 10% to 37%. And the number of children per family has dropped from more than 6 to 4.5. CRS knows what USAID is doing. And when CRS goes into a country and they run a USAID project, it's not just a matter of, well, we're doing this microfinance loan and it's helping these poor people. It's a part of the USAID grant, so USAID is funding our ability to do this, but we're doing a good thing. It's a part of an apparatus. It's like saying, well, I'm not really helping the Nazi war effort. I'm just building carburetors for their tanks. You know, carburetors are a good thing. It's something that makes an engine go. It's morally neutral. But you're helping build the war machine. You're helping to build the war machine. And that's what CRS is doing. By aiding USAID, by acting as an agent. And they're not just, when they get funding from USAID, they're no longer a Catholic organization. They're an agency of the federal government. And so they go into these countries with USAID pins. I've even seen a picture of a guy with a polo shirt, has CRS on one side and USAID on the other. They are agents of the federal government who pushes this population control garbage. And so Catholic Relief Services is a part of that apparatus. They're building the apparatus. PEPFAR, they're huge in the distribution of contraception and condoms. They are like this with USAID. And when PEPFAR goes into a country, they're never just looking for, well, we want to hand out antiretroviral drugs and find ways that we can cure HIV and AIDS. At the bottom line, PEPFAR is all about condoms. They are the single largest condom distributor in the world. And then the Global Fund. We talked about the Global Fund and how they're funding Planned Parenthood, and they're funding contraception, and they're funding contraception promoting programs. And CRS is a part of all of that. But here's the thing, and this is where it all comes together. The official internet resource site for the US government's spending data, okay, so if you want to know how much money the government is spending on any particular project or area, what they're doing with your tax money, it's usaspending.gov. And the stated mission of the website is to show the American public what the federal government spends every year and how it spends the money. So I looked it up, and I found that from 2005 through 2023, USAID has given Catholic Relief Services almost $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion, that's with a B. Okay, and that's just that's a less than 20-year time span. PEPFAR, since 2005, has given Catholic Relief Services almost $1 billion, so about half of that. And that's only if Catholic Relief Service is the prime on the project. I don't know how much they're getting as, the sub grant or the sub partner on any particular grant. And then the Global Fund has provided $264 million to Catholic Relief Services. So it's here's the thing: lobbying is never done. If you're lobbying on behalf of someone else, it's always because you're looking for a kickback. You never lobby for someone else just because you like them. Bill O'Keefe did not go to Congress to lobby on behalf of USAID, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund just because, gosh, they're a bunch of nice guys and we like to see them do good things. It's not why they did it. They did it because they're hoping that USAID, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund will increase their coffers, giving them a greater chance of having more grant money. That's what this is all about. It's all a money grab. It's all about trying to make sure that they've got money in their hands. And if they go and they scratch USAID's back and they rub PEPFAR's back and they pat the Global Fund on the head, put their arm around them, maybe give them a little hug. Well, if they do that, then maybe those agencies will notice and give them some of the prime grants. That's what lobbying is. That's why people go to DC to lobby, because it's about making relationships and networks and all that kind of stuff. So CRS, in effect, by lobbying on behalf of PEPFAR, USA, and the USAID and the Global Fund, is lobbying for its own increased paycheck. That's what this is. That's all this is. So I published my article. After I published my article, I got an email from Bishop Mansour, and he told me that my article was over the top and he hoped that I would take it down. I asked him what was over the top about it. I said there was nothing in my article that was false. He said that my approach was wrong. The bottom line was that, to his way of thinking, the only thing that Bill O'Keefe had done wrong was that he didn't mention how bad it was. He didn't mention that, USAID, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund do some bad things. And he made it a caveat or a condition of my continued access to him, conversations with him. And this makes me sad. I mean, I've considered him a friend. And I still think he's a good man. And I hope you won't come away from this thinking that he's a bad person, because I don't think that. I don't believe that. I just think that he's naive. And I think that he's being hoodwinked by the people that work for him. I really think that that's more the case. But whatever it is, he told me that if I didn't take the article down, then he's just not going to have time to interact with me anymore. I told him I couldn't take the article down, and that was the last that we spoke. So that's where we stand. And it's unfortunate for him that he decided to close that door, because well, maybe you guys don't know me personally, but if I get backed into a corner, if I get told that something is wrong or false, or that maybe I shouldn't be doing, my understanding of X is wrong, I double down and I immediately start digging to find everything I possibly can. So now, in addition to the McCullough report, which is going to come out next week, it would have gone out this week, but this was more immediate. The information that we had on the testimony and everything else was much more immediate, and it was more important for us to get that out. So the McCullough report is going to go out next week. We also have the report on the 4 Children Project, which I believe I also already told you about. But then we discovered something else, and this is what I want to share with you now. I'm going to give you a copy of this document. See, this is why you're a part of the inner circle. You get to see the inner workings, and you get to get kind of the preview of what's coming. This document, those of you that can see the chat, go ahead and open the document. And those of you who can't or don't have chat, well, I don't know what to tell you. I can tell you this: the URL is crs.org. So this is found directly on Catholic Relief Service's own website. Okay, this is, and at the top, you can see it is a Catholic Relief Services document. This is not a third-party document. This is not something that somebody else produced. This is not something that's hosted on some third-party website. This is CRS's own documentation. And it's all about a project called KIDS, KIDSS. That stands for Key Interventions to Develop Systems and Services for Orphans and Vulnerable Children. The time frame for the project is 2014 to 2019, so the project ends this year. It is a $7.6 million project. But what caught our attention is that, and this is only a 2-page flyer, but there's a figure here. And the figure says from January to March 2018, 17,513 services were provided to 7,541 beneficiaries, which averages to 2.3 services per beneficiary. The chart provides an overview of the services provided during this period and the percentage of each compared to the total services provided. The most common service provided was ECD. ECD stands for, let me see if I can remember what this is. ECD, what is ECD? I think it's early childhood development. Okay. ART, which is antiretroviral stuff. HIV risk assessment, nutrition support, and HTS. At the very bottom of the chart, it says SRH. SRH stands for sexual and reproductive health. That's a rather curious thing for CRS to have on their document. Why are they involved in sexual and reproductive health? Anytime you see sexual and reproductive health anywhere, it means contraception. That's what it is. It's contraception or even abortion, but it means contraception and abortion. So then it says it has this key results. By the end of 2019, KIDSS will produce the following results. And then it gives a few, and then it says HIV negative children benefit from HIV prevention activities, including sexual and reproductive health education. This was an open door, and we started looking. We started digging around to try and see what we could find. And what we found is that this particular project, KIDSS Kids, they wound up hiring. I'm going to share some of this stuff with you. This is really over the top. Let me see, where is there was an ad. I'm not finding it just now. I've got probably close to 200 or 300 tabs open at the moment, so that's probably why I can't find it. Yeah, I have it somewhere. I can't find it right now. You'll have to see it in the report, I suppose, or I'll show it to you next week when I have everything put together in a report. We just dug into this yesterday and today, so this is like fresh information. But the bottom line was Catholic Relief Services had put out an ad for a position regarding. Oh, that's what it was. Let me see if I can. I know where it was. It was this person. Where is she? There she is. Okay. Properties. All right. I'll put this in the chat. You can take a look at this. All right. So this person here, this is a LinkedIn page. Vanessa Mosenge. Okay. She works for Catholic Relief Services. Her position is gender-based violence, HIV, and gender communication for development. Okay. Under experience in working for CRS, she's been there since July of 2018, so she's been there for 9 months. It says AYSRH GBV specialist. Let me break that down for you. AY is something, was it? Oh, adolescent, youth, sexual and reproductive health. AYSRH. Adolescent, youth, sexual and reproductive health. And then GBV is gender-based violence specialist. CRS put out an ad saying, we need somebody to do these programs for adolescent, youth, sexual and reproductive health. And in the description, they talked about this sexual and reproductive health stuff. And I mean, she's got a little bit of a checkered past working for FHI 360, which is a really bad organization. I mean, they're extremely pro-abortion and pro-contraception. She worked for CARE, which is also pro-abortion, pro-contraception. So her background is sketchy already. But it's strange. Whoops. Error, try again. Did that go through? No, it's not going through. I wonder why. That'll let that go through. I don't know why it won't let. Oh, you know what? Let me try this. Nope. That's really strange. Huh. So I've tried several times now to put her her LinkedIn profile in the chat box, and it won't let me. That's odd. I don't know why. Anyway, so this position. So she was working in sexual and adolescent youth, sexual and reproductive health. So we started looking around, trying to figure out, well, what's the connection with adolescent youth reproductive health in relation to the kids program, and what is all this? So we found another ad, and this ad pretty much laid it out for us, because we found that Catholic Relief Services is connected with another group called Renata, RENATA. It stands for something in French, Réseau National des Tantines. I don't know what that is, but it's a comprehensive reproductive sexual health organization, and we have documentation showing how they've lobbied for abortion. We have documentation showing how they are distributing and promoting contraception, including condoms. And so in a lot of this back and forth discovery, we found that CRS is referring their people to this organization. That's what CRS's relationship with this group is all about. They are making referrals to this group for the sexual and reproductive health stuff. We also discovered that there was this other guy, since I can't seem to put LinkedIn links in there, I'll just give you his name, and you can Google search him. You'll find him. He comes right up. This guy, Gael Ecobono, his experience, his job experience as Catholic Relief Services, Renata, RENATA, KIDSS. He is the guy who is supposed to be facilitating the networking between Catholic Relief Services and Renata for the Kids Project. And then we found several other organizations that are directly being referred by CRS for this project. Let me see if I can find the website where yeah, here it is. Okay. So this I think you will find very interesting. And those of you who don't speak French, you will probably have to run it through Google Translate. And let me put this up here real quick. Okay, so there's this website. This is another group that CRS was referring to, called Horizons Femmes. And this article on Horizons Femmes is all about Catholic Relief Services. And in the French, let me see if I can translate this real quick, because My French is severely lacking, almost non-existent. It says, under the auspices of the Catholic Relief Services, the 5 community-based organizations, CBOs, implementing the project. In other words, CRS is the prime. They're the ones responsible for this project. And there are 5 organizations under them, under this designation of sexual and reproductive health, which was on their own document. So these CBOs implementing the project made the trip to take part in these activities. In other words, these activities that CRS had set up. These are Horizons Women, Renata, SWAA Litoral, Marenzo, and Codas Caritas. Now, I haven't looked into Codas Caritas, but I have looked into Horizons Women, Renata, and SWAA Litoral, and all of them are very heavily involved in the promotion of contraception and abortion. And so what CRS, by actually being in charge of this project, is directly responsible for referring young people to those monsters. There's no explanation for this. There's no way for them to say, well, you know, we have to work with people and it's not for any of that stuff, and we make sure. No, I don't care if it's if you have in writing in blood that says they're not allowed to talk to youth about abortion or contraception, but only about menstrual cycles or something along those lines. I don't care if that's what it says. But if you have an organization that is basically the African equivalent of Planned Parenthood, and you're referring kids to them, your agreement doesn't mean squat. And that organization is going to pervert their minds, because that's what they do. And it is, well, what are you going to do? The bottom line is we got them on this, and we've got them on several other things. There's just no way CRS is going to be able to talk their way out of it. This is a current project. This is something they are doing right now. Right now. So we're going to put out a report after the McCullough report, and we're going to just hammer them, because they are currently referring young people to monsters, handing them over to people who want to kill their souls. There's no excuse for this. This is not a Catholic organization. And there's no way that, I mean, even if Bishop Mansour really wanted to change things, and he was on fire to say, you know what, Michael, you're right about all of this. He can't do anything to change it either, because the whole corrupt mechanism is bad. As long as CRS is in bed with USAID, PEPFAR, and the Global Fund, and all of their paychecks are contingent upon their lobbying for them and then getting kickbacks, then there's no way you're going to change it, because the addiction to that government money is stronger than their desire to be Catholic, and it always will be. The only way any real, true, and charitable works actually works is if you give up the money and you do it because you love souls. You do it because you love people and you want to see people go to heaven. And it's not even about just do-goodism. You can't just go out in the street and hand out sandwiches and think you're going to go to heaven. It's a good thing to do, but you have to engage and you have to guide people to Christ, because that's what the church is about. That's why the church exists. This is a Catholic agency. As an agency of the Catholic Church, it's supposed to be doing the works of the Catholic Church, not just some feely-good do-goodism stuff. That does nothing for your soul. These people are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have their reward. There's no spiritual merit to what they're doing, because they're getting paid to do a job. And as long as that's all it is a job, it's not charity. And if it's not charity, it's not Catholic. And if it's not Catholic, it has to have the name Catholic stripped from it. And that's where we are. So with regard to Catholic Relief Services, that's what I've been pouring almost my entire focus, actually, yeah, my entire focus this entire week has been on CRS. It's been on CRS regarding the past, and now it's on these different projects that I'm currently researching. And it's absolutely, totally, and thoroughly corrupt. Thoroughly corrupt. And we're going to expose it. We're going to expose it. So I appreciate your patience as I went on my little soapbox there. But I do have some things that people sent in. There were some things that some of you wanted me to address. So let's see. Is it true that the Pope said Mary was not a saint from the beginning? And if so, does that not deny the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception? First things first. Yes, the Pope said it. It was another one of his offhanded comments. So it's hard to pin down just how much thought or intent he put behind it. It shows kind of a mindset that he's got, which is bad enough. But when he did indeed say that she was not born a saint. I believe that's what he said. She wasn't born a saint. What he was saying in that comment was that she's not born a saint. She had to, live out her life. She had to maintain her goodness so that at the end of her life, she could then be assumed into heaven. In a very roundabout, best possible scenario, he's sort of technically right. But she was conceived without sin. And to say that she wasn't born a saint is to say that she was not destined. That is to say that it would actually be to deny that she was destined to be sinless and to remain sinless for the rest of her life. Our Lady is spotless. She was untouched. She never gave in to sin. It doesn't mean that she wasn't tempted. We don't know if she was ever tempted. We don't know any instance that she was tempted with. But being a human person, I think that there had to have been at least some kind of temptation. But that still doesn't mean that she wasn't born a saint. She was born a saint. She was born sinless. And the definition of a saint is one who is with God. Whether we're physically eye to eye with him, or if when we are in a state of grace, we're saints. We're saints. We're not dead and it's not fixed. But in that moment, we're a saint. So if I'm in a state of grace and you're in a state of grace, this is why St. Paul refers to the people when he writes, I can't remember which letter it was, but he referred to them as saints. He called them saints. Yes, we can be saints and we can be living saints. That is a thing. Our Lady was a saint at that moment. She was a saint throughout her entire life by virtue of her never having sinned. And we are saints when we are in a state of grace. Why? Because we're with God. Because we have sanctifying grace. We have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit living within us. And because of that, by virtue of that alone, we're saints. And when we die, our soul will go to its natural place. We will already be in union and in communion with God himself. And so by virtue and by the nature of our relationship with him at that very moment, we'll die, and we'll die in that state. And then we'll be fixed. And then we can never not be saints. But as long as we're here and we can continue to make choices, we can lose our sanctity. Okay, that's all that is. I can't say for absolute certain that what Pope Francis said was an outright denial of the Immaculate Conception, because I think in the sense that he was considering the final end rather than the immediate sense. But even in the immediate sense, Our Lady was a saint. She was always a saint. She was born a saint. She was conceived a saint, and she died a saint. Died or reposed. So a lot of it has to do with the way he was defining his terms, and that's the problem of modernism, is that it's like trying to kickbox a Jello mold. It just conforms to the shape of your fist. No matter how hard you hit it, you're really not going to do it any damage because it just kind of moves around it. So modernists, they just take what you say, or they take what they say, and they say, "Oh, I didn't mean it like that," and then they redefine what they meant, and they tell you what they meant, and then they move on, and then it sounds like it's okay, but you're still shaking, you're still scratching the back of your brain, going, "That still doesn't quite make sense, but okay." So be very careful about trying to find instances where Pope Francis is a material or a formal heretic. Um, it's a very easy way to get yourself caught in a trap. Uh, it's best not to approach it. The thing is, if he says something that's wrong, correct it. We can't judge who he is or his office, but we do stay vigilant because we do know that he says an awful lot of wrong things. So make yourself aware. Yes, what he said was only sort of kind of true in a future sense. If he was speaking in a future tense, which I didn't see the original language that he said it in, so I don't know. But just be careful. Yes, Our Lady was born a saint. She was conceived a saint. She is a saint. She's always been a saint, and she was never not a saint. Just be careful. I can't really say much more than that. Just be very, very careful. And let's see. We had one other question. Somebody asked, is there a fund to help persecuted priests? To my knowledge, there is no such existent fund. I have been in communication with people who have said there ought to be such a thing. And so I think that there might be a motion to create such a thing and to put such a thing in place where priests that are on the run, like Father Kalchik or Archbishop Vigano, would be financially taken care of in the case that they were being chased down by their bishops or being persecuted by their bishops. But there's probably, and I don't know this for sure, somebody would have to really study the canonical canonical precepts that would allow such a thing to exist, or how it would exist, what would be the mechanism, how would you pay them, how would you make sure that they receive the money, and how do you do that without tracking it back to yourself so that you can't be tracked. I mean, there are a lot of things to consider. I think it's a good idea, and I think that there should be a mechanism for us to help persecuted priests. I do know that Father Kalchik was helped considerably with a GoFundMe account. I believe that they were able to raise some $100,000 or something like that on his behalf. So there are ways for us to help that already exist without it being from a fund or a foundation. But again, there should be such a thing, I'm not entirely sure how to make that happen. That's not really my bailiwick, but there is discussion on the possibility of such a thing. So if does anybody else have any questions or comments or concerns or anything you'd like to discuss for the next few minutes? I'll let you go ahead and put your comment in the chat box while I just have a cup of coffee. Sorry, that joke doesn't get old. Elizabeth Warren looked so ridiculous pouring that beer. I'm going to have a beer. Would you like to have a beer? I like beer. And it doesn't look like anybody has anything, or nope. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and wrap up here? And if you have anything that you'd like to discuss next week, like I said, I will be spending most of my time on CRS, looking at CRS documentation and just poring over document after document. I think my eyes are about to pop out of my head. If I look like I've got some red eyes, it's because I've been reading for the last week and my eyes dry out. So, so anyway, why don't we go ahead and close up, and I will talk to you next week. If you have anything that you want to talk about next week, send me an email, and we'll talk about it then. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend. God bless you all.